Alright guys, welcome back to the Somber Heaven situation. Since getting the initial video out earlier this week, a lot of people have come to me with even more concerning information regarding both Nico and Somber Heaven. This video is assuming that you've seen video number 1, and if you haven't already, then I'll leave it in the description down below. Very important. All week, I've been going back and forth with people who have either been scammed by Nico in the past via Kingdom Hearts 3 mod commissions, yes, there's even more, or people who have worked with Nico in the past, whether it be on Somber Heaven or something unrelated. Now, unless something absolutely insane comes out after we've wrapped up this video, I think it's pretty much safe to say that this is going to be the final chapter in the Somber Heaven saga. I think we've exhausted all information that's needed to be brought to the surface, but we did get some good news a couple of days ago. Nico ended up sending out an email to all of the Kickstarter backers, and this is it right here. I'll read it out. There's way too much negativity surrounding me and the project, and it's causing me a huge amount of stress and depression. I'm sending refunds out right now to every person who backed the project.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
So this is good because this was one of the main pillars of concern. Considering Nico's track record, the fair here was that Nico was going to use the Kickstarter money for purposes outside of the Kickstarter itself. Even though he was aware that he couldn't, he had intentions to use this Kickstarter money to pay back the people he owes from his commission scamming. Now, it's important to know that Nico doesn't actually have any of the money raised from the Kickstarter, which is sitting at $14,491 US dollars. Kickstarter money isn't deposited to the creator until 14 days after a campaign's deadline. This campaign ended on the 23rd of March, so the funds wouldn't have been deposited to him until the 6th of April. So at this stage, it's in Kickstarter's hands to issue the refund. However, the way that Nico has handled this entire situation really rubs me the wrong way. Looking at the update section on his Kickstarter page, there is no mention of the project essentially being cancelled. He also decided to remove this comment from his Kickstarter page. It was posted shortly after my exposure video was released. That's not the greatest look. Well, I have no doubts that the information that's publicly circulating to do with Nico and Somber Heaven is definitely causing him some stress and depression. I do feel like the mention of this within the official Kickstarter email from Nico here is a means of trying to generate sympathy for himself. The reason why I say that is for any of the excuses that Nico has given towards people not hearing from him for months on end in relation to waiting for a Kingdom Hearts 3 mod commission, the excuse would always be, I've been depressed, or I've been down and out, or there has been something going on, usually along the lines of, I need sympathy and this is why you haven't heard from me. But what absolutely confirms Nico's victim complex here is what he told his official Somber Heaven Discord channel after I uploaded that first Somber Heaven video. He mentions that he asked me to remove that video because it was generating a lot of negative comments, which in return was making him depressed. This is a straight out lie. Here's the DM with Nico, with me mentioning, hey Nico, I've decided to take down the Somber Heaven video as I've been informed about some pretty concerning allegations towards this project regarding so on and so forth. Again, I do believe he's probably going through it right now, but it's sort of hard to feel sorry for someone that has brought that feeling upon themselves. It's the cause of their actions that have resulted in him feeling like a stale white piece of dog shit. But I think the worst thing here is that Nico still hasn't publicly acknowledged any of this. If Nico truly did have good intentions and was able to explain maybe some of the claims that were put forward about him, I mean, he would have acknowledged this day one, as soon as Darlin brought this into the public eye over on Twitter. But there is nothing of the sort. Not even a mention of, hey, I'm sorry, I apologize to all of the people that I've wronged. And the longer time goes by without Nico publicly saying something, the worse off he looks. Now, I've been made aware of a few more commission scams here. That current figure that we have of money that he owes people right now of $5,000 US, yeah, it's a bit more than that, and I'm sure we won't ever know the total figure. Who knows how many people he's been scamming over the past few years. Sven Cakeman commissioned Nico $1,200 to make a custom world mod for KH3. This would be the 100 Acre Wood in a seamless open world-esque type design where all areas of the 100 Acre Wood are interconnected to one another without any loading screens. It was sounding pretty ambitious. This was going to include some mini-games, some side quest features, and even redesigned Winnie the Pooh characters. Now, this was actually one of the KH3 mod projects that Nico was teasing over on Twitter that never saw the light of day. A Final Fantasy VII Rebirth character model mod package, which Nico tallied up to cost a total of $2,000 US. Jonathan ended up spending $2,050 on this commission. Now, you can see that conversations about this commission started in April of last year. Skip forward to last month, February 24th to be exact, and well, the mod still hasn't been finished. And we have another case of Nico asking his customer to give him something here. He literally asked Jonathan to give him a copy of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So he was creating mods for a game that he doesn't even own. Jonathan has asked for a refund and he's still yet to get it. Michael, also known as Faithdrawn, was another person impacted by Nico at the beginning of this year in February. He's a solo indie developer working on his own project, Twilight Explorers, which he commissioned Nico $750 to help assist with this project. The commission that Nico took on here was helping Michael apply Unreal Engine's gameplay ability system into his game, along with helping with the functionality of some UI elements. The commission was also for all of this work to be done via Unreal Engine blueprint coding. The document that Michael has supplied me with here is very long, very in-depth, incredibly extensive. It would take me an incredibly long time to go through everything. Again, it's stuff that I already know about in relation to Nico's character, but oh my god, dude, like reading over a conversation with Nico that spans over the course of just more than a month, it's painful, and I would rather marinate a cinder block and try to digest it. So to keep this concise, I'm just going to talk about the important bits and the gist of what's going on here. Like all other commissions that Nico would take on, he gave pushback after pushback with excuse on top of excuse. There's an excuse that was given to Michael that I haven't seen Nico mention at all towards any other person throughout the multiple cases that I've looked into, but apparently this guy has a wife and 3 kids. You smell that? Kind of smells like a modern day snake oil salesman. Now, the initial work was completed by Nico looking at the gameplay ability system. This was done via using Nico's very own Somber Combat Framework plugin. However, Michael does have a feeling that this framework plugin for a combat system actually contains possible stolen code from elsewhere, stitched together to make it look like his very own package. Because of this, Twilight Explorers right now has reverted back to a version before Nico ever worked on it. Nico also had access to all systems and plugins that Michael either developed himself or purchased for the purpose of developing his game. He actually asked for a different version of one of these plugins to be supported with UE 5.5 and not 5.4, which is what Twilight Explorers was running on. 5.5 was the version that Somber Heaven was running on. And he straight up mentions here in one of the Discord chats that Somber Heaven uses 5.5 and he wants to test something with it. Nico even mentions that Twilight Explorers here is a form of a testing ground for Somber Heaven. This alludes to Nico potentially stealing either ideas or straight up plugins purchased for the purpose of Twilight Explorers for the use of Somber Heaven. He would also spend a lot of time using Twilight Explorers code, applying it to C++, the same programming language he used for Somber Heaven. whereas he should have been doing Unreal Engine blueprint coding. He would also suggest plugins for Michael to buy, which would in return make the development of Twilight Explorers easier. No doubt the intention behind this is so that Nico himself can get his hands on a plugin without actually having to buy it in order to use it on Somber Heaven. One thing I've noticed about Nico is whenever it comes to these business conversations, he tries to reap people for as much as possible. There's always got to be something a little bit extra, aside from the absurd, insane amounts of cash he's getting from the get-go. He's always asking for something else from the person who's paying him to do a job in the first place. Time went on and Nico continued to make excuse after excuse. He eventually arrived to the point where I put up my tweet mentioning that I had removed the Somber Heaven video and I had heard a few concerning things regarding the project. Michael confronted him about this and Nico pretty much gave the exact same response as he did on the official Somber Heaven Discord. I wanted him to keep the video removed because of all of the hurty comments, trying to get Michael to feel sorry for him. We then arrive at the day I released my Somber Heaven Exposed video. Michael sees it, pulls out, sends Nico this message here, and hasn't heard from him since. There's a few other interesting things I found out within Michael's document, like how Nico quite literally developed the Kingdom Hearts command menu system to be implemented into Somber Heaven. Now, if Nico had gone through with this, and this was in a build that had released of the game, then he would have been in further legal trouble with Square Enix because of this. Have you ever wondered why the Kingdom Hearts command menu system has never been replicated in any other action RPG video game? Well, that's because Square Enix literally have this system copyrighted. Legally, no other developer is allowed to replicate this system. Nico admits to stealing both the font and the font effect that Square Enix use for the Kingdom Hearts trailers. At the beginning of February, he mentioned that if the Kickstarter didn't work out for the project, he wouldn't be working on Somber Heaven anymore. He mentions here that the project depends on the Kickstarter because he can't develop it if he doesn't have the funding for it, though the funding was only ever supposed to go to a new graphics card, presumably a 5090, and a motion capture suit. So the money raised via the Kickstarter was never actually for any other funding outside of certain pieces of equipment. And yes, obviously, the $13,000 goal is the most completely unrealistic, overly ambitious budget for the type of game he was trying to develop. And by the way, he knew this as well. In November of last year, when talking to one of the other Somber Heaven developers, he did say here that $40,000 should be about the minimum required to develop Somber Heaven. And we saw for the first version of Somber Heaven's Kickstarter page, Nico was asking for $50,000. My speculation here, like I mentioned in that first video, was to bring the price down so that he was more likely to encourage people to put money towards this project, as the goal amount isn't totally unrealistic and pretty decent on paper for what he was offering. For anyone that doesn't really understand at least a very basic surface level idea of how game development works and the sort of money required to make a game like this. What makes all of the commission scamming even worse is that he actually joked with someone about how he commissioned scams. Absolutely rotten. He was also misleading all of his Kickstarter backers. Now, aside from the very large, stacked up high pile of monkey shit that we have on Nico right now, there's a pretty integral piece of information that all of the backers should have been aware of. In this conversation, Nico is talking about how the game might go for an episodic approach to make development a little bit easier. This is something I mentioned in my initial video showcasing Somber Heaven, as he informed me about this. The difference between this conversation and what I was told about was in that DM, he told me if he was able to get a publisher, then the game would be one full complete package, no episodes. However, with no publisher on board, he'll look at just simply doing episodes, and this is based on the $13,000 he's asking for on Kickstarter. But in this conversation, he's mentioning in the case of only getting $13,000, it'll be episodic. In the case of getting over $25,000, I'll be able to do the full game. Still incredibly ambitious, and no you won't. There is no mention of the game being dissected into 3 episodes anywhere on the Kickstarter page. Let's do a quick fire round of some more garbage I know about. More AI nonsense. This man was quite literally using AI textures. AI voice work, cause, you know, why pay a voice actor when I could literally just use my own voice and use an Aerith voice model and actually include one of these AI voice models into the trailer of my game. But wait, Nico's a creative person that doesn't need AI at all. Objection! Going between both PayPal and Cash App under completely different identities. Absolutely nothing to do with the game had been developed by the point of the Kickstarter being funded. He deleted that build of the game that's being advertised for the purpose of the campaign so that he could free up 200 gigs of space to install Fortnite and Tekken 8. This is not how a Kickstarter works. Back in September of last year, this guy was worried about being exposed. What are you, an idiot? Why did you keep going on with this nonsense? Look at where we are today. Look at what you've forced me to do. Do you think I really want to be doing this? I don't! You are like embarrassing levels of goofiness. A form of payment was promised to one of the composers of Somber Heaven, Suigatoa. You guessed it, it never happened. Accepting commissions when he literally doesn't have the equipment required in order to complete the job. This would be like me rocking up to McDonald's asking for a Big Mac. I ask, hey, do you have a Big Mac? Yeah, we got Big Macs. Okay, cool. Here's money. They take money. They turn around and say, actually, you know what? We don't have any of the ingredients. Flat out lettuce, cheese, special sauce, beef, buns. We got nothing. I'm like, okay, what the f***? Give me back my money. They then proceed to close the drive-thru window, and I'm left outside burgerless. Nico is quite literally the Hamburglar in this situation. This guy was prepared to lie to the Game Development World Championship, a yearly gaming expo where game developers can step forward to show off their games they've been working on, with a chance to win a cash prize. I mean, if there's money in the equation, you can bet Nico's right there at the front doorstep. One of the rules for submitting your game into this is that it must have been in development since May 31st of last year. This was something that was in the works at the beginning of this month. And we know that the current build of Somber Heaven is an utter dust bowl. At the end of December, it seems as if Nico was trying to scam someone to create the Kickstarter page for him, mentioning that he wouldn't be able to pay this person until the project was funded. Basically meaning all of this person's time and effort hung on the contingency that the Kickstarter was successful. No one would accept that. Obviously, like anyone with a brain intact, this guy decided to turn down the offer. I've got some information on the large contributor to the Kickstarter. Now, in that first video, I brought up the idea of Nico self-inflating the Kickstarter to bring it closer to its goal in order to encourage people to donate towards it, as this was one of the exact ideas that Nico had brought up in the past. Well, I'm kind of happy to announce that is not the case, and it actually was a real person that contributed $8,111. However, this is on the basis that they are a voice actor in the game, which is kind of f***ed up when you think about it, because it's like generally you need to pay voice actors, so this person is putting forward an absurd amount of money into your project, so in return you get more than half of what you're asking for the funding goal, plus you get free voice acting work. Again, Nico always gets a little something extra out of every single opportunity. And he actually lied to Michael about this. Apparently that initial amount that this person put forward was actually 10k. Now that part is true because they mention in this original message here that they dropped their donation down to 8,000. Look, I don't want to be mean and I don't want to tell people what to do with their money, but I am concerned that this person put $10,000 down initially. Even looking at the 8,000 figure, that's crazy enough too. For Somber Heaven. They literally looked at this trailer, read the information, and they were like, yeah, I'm gonna put it all on the line. I love this. This is my everything. I've been waiting for this. I need it! But here's Nico lying again, mentioning that this person wants to be a producer of the title, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Why? I don't even know, but no, it was voice acting work. Nico refuses to pay anyone up front. because it's never his intention to actually pay people for their time and effort. He mentions here that he may have found a cool artist for the artwork of Somber Heaven, but then he said, never mind, they want payment up front. How about you f***ing give people what you owe them up front? As of the 22nd of March, Nico's current refund plan in order to pay back all of the commission scamming, and by God, there is so many, so it's gonna take this guy a long-ass time, but it's to finish Somber Heaven. Apparently, he has a deal with his dad where he'll take a loan out for him in order to pay these people back, on the basis that he finishes Somber Heaven. If I was the father in that situation, I would literally just be the Arthur clenched fist meme the entire time. Although I'm sure that Nico's probably spun a completely alternate story, a completely alternate version of events that paints him out to be the good person in every single scenario. Now, I have no idea how this guy is supposed to finish Somber Heaven. Number one is he's got no funding anymore. None. Zilch. Nada. Number two, his equipment clearly isn't up to the marks of developing an open-world video game. Number three, the reputation of the Somber Heaven name is so tainted now. Even in a Bubble Boy suit, no one would want to touch this. Number four, I don't think this guy is as qualified as he lets on to be. He mentions that he has 10 years worth of Unreal Engine experience, but the amount of evidence that we have that shows Nico trying to cut every single corner possible. The Somber Heaven is at a point where the originality percentage is like less than 5%, and that everything is either used from asset packs, animation packs, or AI work. This guy would have to be clinically delusional in order to think that he could actually successfully pull off a quality open world RPG all by himself. Now, I'm not saying that Nico doesn't have experience though, because it's been proved to me throughout reading a lot of these conversations that, yeah, he actually does have a certain level of knowledge when it comes to working with game development. And I think this is one of the most disappointing aspects of the entire situation, is that if this guy had just continued to apply himself, study games development more, and not be so money driven, he could have turned out to be a person that had a lot of potential to offer the video games industry. However, it's just a case of these very strong narcissistic and incredibly greedy traits taking over what qualities he has. Now, previously, we've already talked a lot about the asset theft that's taken place for Somber Heaven. Nico basically stealing Square Enix models and using their heads for his own characters. What about the bodies? I wonder where those come from. Ha! Well, would you guess it? Square Enix as well. But these are extra spicy versions of Square Enix models. You see, Nico would take nude mods for characters like Teether and Aerith, reshape them, I'm guessing in metahuman, and as he explains in his own words, just simply stitch a head on. That was also stolen too. The whole thing's just this Frankenstein amalgamation of theft. He justifies here that if he takes a model, chucks it into metahuman, remorphs it, technically, that's not stealing. You are a moron. Absolutely bamboo-brained.
Hollow.
Also, this isn't relevant to anything, but he's talking about, like, there's no nips, no vag creases.
Good ass stuff.
Now, at this stage, I'm aware that Nico has been deleting all of his Discord servers, along with blocking contact with most people. We at least have one good result out of bringing this to the surface, and that is the Kickstarter side of things. It looks like the Kickstarter is actively being dismantled. Nico has more than proved that he's in no position to be making promises and receiving money for them, because he is simply incapable. However, the bigger issue here is absolutely the commission scamming. Over the next coming months, it's going to be interesting to see if this guy does anything towards trying to repay the thousands of dollars he currently owes to multiple people. What I can't understand about this is how he thought that he could do this for as long as he did. Like, we're talking multiple years here, not delivering the work that has been paid for, and not expecting anyone to be like, yo, what's going on here? It's funny that like most people that are doing these scams and these schemes are like just some of the stupidest people out there. Like you can't just ignore the fact that you owe all of this money and that you just move on to the next thing and think that the problem is just going to go away. I'm being for real here. Nico's time management is one of the worst examples of which I think I have ever seen in the 27 years of my existence. I don't know how someone can operate like this. I really didn't think like me showcasing Somber Heaven would have led me down a path like this. Like what a bizarre detour. Absolutely strange. The channel has been sort of a little bit quiet over this past week between getting sick and everything that's been going on with like the Somber Heaven scandal of 2025. For the past 2 weeks, it's consumed so much of my time. So I apologize if our usual scheduled programming has seemed a little bit off, but I felt it was important that people knew about this, especially before he could do any more damage. And especially because bro locked on to me trying to wrangle me down into the realm of darkness. Nuh-uh, son. Alright, I'm gonna pull a full fucking Trinity limit on your ass. Don't try that shit with me! Trying to jeopardize my position? I promise you I will whip out a Yuzora level DM. And I will make sure to eat that motherfucking Kupo coin too. This fool even knew it was GG's as soon as that first video dropped! Alright, composure. To everyone that has reached out to me over the past 2 weeks, I'm so sorry you also had to go through all of this, especially to those who have been financially impacted by Nico. These are the worst cases. So much stress has been endured because of this man, a lot of time has been wasted, and a good amount of financial loss has occurred. But I wouldn't have been able to construct both of these videos the way I was able to without all of your help. You guys know who you are. Thank you so much for coming forward about all of this. This person is genuinely one of the worst people I think I've come across within the Kingdom Hearts community, and I've definitely experienced my fair share, so I think that is kind of saying something. We'll be back to our regular scheduled programming starting next week. I've got some stuff I need to get out and have been meaning to get out for a while now, but with all of the recent antics, it's just taken up so much of my time. Streaming is also like another thing that's on my plate right now that I meant to jump back into about 2 weeks ago, but of course, through all of the dramas, and there have been a couple that have been ensuing within my space of things here on the internet. It's just been so time consuming and I've kind of had to pay a bit of attention to them. All of the comments on the recent videos though have been a major help, more so than you can imagine. So thanks always for that, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into today's video. Be sure to slap that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Big thanks to my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so much for keeping the channel alive. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. We'll talk again real soon.